The water was cold and dark 30 feet below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. As Commander Tae-ho Kim swam through the murky depths with his Navy SEAL team, they had been practicing underwater demolition techniques for 3 hours, and everyone was getting tired. But Tae-ho pushed them to continue because real missions would not wait for anyone to feel comfortable. Suddenly, the ocean above them began to glow with a strange blue light that got brighter and brighter. Tae-ho looked up through his diving mask and saw something that made his heart stop. The sky was opening up like someone was tearing a hole in a giant piece of paper, and through that hole came a massive silver ship that was unlike anything he had ever seen. The alien vessel was at least 500 feet long and shaped like a smooth teardrop with no visible engines or weapons. It fell from the tear in space and crashed into the ocean with such tremendous force that the impact created waves 20 feet high that rolled out in all directions. Tae-ho felt the shockwave push him deeper underwater, and he had to fight to swim back toward the surface. His team members were struggling too, but they were all experienced divers who knew how to handle unexpected situations. The real problem was that their small patrol boat was being tossed around by the giant waves like a toy. Through his underwater radio, Tae-ho heard his team leader, Sergeant Dong-min, shouting orders to evacuate the area immediately and return to base to report what they had seen. But Tae-ho was not ready to leave yet, because his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He had spent his entire military career training for situations that most people would never face. And this was definitely one of those situations. He told his team to surface and get back to the boat while he dove down to investigate the crashed ship alone. This was against standard military protocol, but Tae-ho was known for making quick decisions in dangerous situations. His commanding officers trusted his judgment even when he took risks that other soldiers would not take. The alien ship had settled on the ocean floor about 40 feet down and was still glowing with that strange blue light. Tae-ho swam closer and could see that the metal hull was made of some kind of material that looked like liquid silver, but felt solid when he touched it. There was a large crack in the side of the ship where water was flowing in. He squeezed through the crack and found himself inside a corridor that was filled with water, but still had air pockets near the ceiling. The inside of the ship was even stranger than the outside, with walls that curved in impossible ways, and lights that seemed to float in the air without any visible source. Following the corridor deeper into the ship, Tae-ho came to a large room that looked like it might be the control center. There were 3 alien creatures lying on the floor, and they were clearly dying. 2 of them were already dead, but the third one was still breathing very slowly. The alien was unlike anything Tae-ho had imagined from science fiction movies. It had blue skin that looked almost transparent, and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. Its body was thin and tall, with long arms that ended in hands with 6 fingers each. When the dying alien saw Tae-ho approaching it, tried to sit up and speak. Its voice was weak and made sounds that were like music mixed with clicking noises, but somehow Tae-ho could understand a few words. The alien was speaking broken English and seemed to be trying to warn him about something. "Your world is in great danger," the alien whispered as it grabbed Tae-ho's arm with surprising strength. "They will come soon to harvest everything living on your planet. You must warn your people before it is too late." The alien pressed a small round device into Tae-ho's hand, and the moment his fingers closed around it, the device began to glow with bright, white light. The light surrounded his entire body, and he felt something scanning him from his head to his toes. It was like being examined by invisible hands that could see inside his mind. When the light faded away, the alien was dead. But something had changed inside Tae-ho's head. He could suddenly understand the alien language perfectly, and he could see symbols and pictures in his mind that he had never seen before. The device had somehow connected to his brain and was downloading information directly into his memory. Tae-ho looked around the control room and found a computer terminal that was still working. The screen showed star maps with hundreds of planets marked with different colored symbols. Earth was there, marked with a red symbol, and when Tae-ho concentrated on it, he somehow knew that red meant scheduled for harvest. The alien device was teaching him things about space and other worlds that no human had ever known before. He learned that these 3 aliens were rebels who had been running away from something called the Galactic Council. The Council was a group of advanced alien species who traveled from world to world, taking resources and destroying entire civilizations. Earth was next on their list, and according to the star maps, the Council fleet would arrive in exactly 6 months. The rebels had tried to warn as many worlds as possible, but most species never had enough time to prepare for what was coming. Earth was different because the rebels had managed to give them advance warning. Tejo realized that the small device in his hand was not just a translator, but a complete military database containing thousands of years of information about space warfare and alien technology. His brain was being rewritten to handle massive amounts of strategic knowledge that would normally take a lifetime to learn. He swam back through the ship corridors and up to the surface where his team was waiting in their patrol boat. They were amazed to see him alive, because he had been underwater for almost an hour, which should have been impossible even with advanced diving equipment. When Tejo tried to explain what had happened, his team members thought he might be suffering from nitrogen poisoning or some kind of underwater hallucination. But then he started speaking in the alien language and showing them symbols that appeared in the air around the device. The patrol boat raced back to their naval base where Tejo was immediately taken to the medical facility for examination. The doctors could not understand what had happened to him because the alien device seemed to be alive and was somehow connected to his nervous system. Over the next few days, more alien ships began crashing in oceans around the world, and each one contained the same blue-skinned rebels with the same warning message about the Galactic Council. The government finally realized that Tejo was telling the truth, and that Earth was facing the greatest threat in human history. Alien device continued to teach Tejo about galactic warfare, and he began to understand that humanity might have advantages that other species did not possess. The Council had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never faced a species like humans who were naturally good at adapting and fighting against overwhelming odds. As Tejo studied the star maps and battle reports from across the galaxy, he realized that he was no longer just a Navy SEAL protecting his country. He had become something much more important, the first human to understand their true enemies and the only person who might be able to save Earth from complete destruction. The galaxy was about to discover that they had made a terrible mistake by underestimating humanity. Dr. So-Young Park was working late in her language research laboratory at Seoul National University when she received an urgent phone call from the Korean Ministry of Defense. They needed her expertise immediately for a matter of national security that she could not discuss over the phone. A military helicopter was already on its way to pick her up. So-Young was one of the world's leading experts in ancient languages and had spent 15 years studying how different cultures communicated. But nothing in her education had prepared her for what she was about to encounter. She gathered her research materials and waited on the university roof as the helicopter landed. The flight to the secret military base took only 20 minutes, but So-Young's mind was racing with questions about what could be so urgent that they needed a language expert in the middle of the night. When she arrived at the base, she was escorted through multiple security checkpoints and into an underground medical facility. Inside a sterile white room, she saw Commander Tae-ho Kim sitting in a hospital bed surrounded by doctors and military officers. The small alien device was clearly visible in his right hand, glowing with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. So-Young had never seen anything like it in her entire academic career. General Min-Woo Lee introduced himself and explained that Tae-ho had recovered an alien artifact that seemed to be alive and was somehow changing his brain function. The doctors could not understand how the device worked or what it was doing to him. They needed So-Young to help them communicate with whatever intelligence might be inside the device Tae-ho looked at. So-Young and began speaking in a language that sounded like music mixed with strange clicking and whistling sounds. The words flowed together in patterns that were completely unlike any human language she had ever heard, but somehow they seemed to have a logical structure. Then Tae-ho switched to perfect Korean and translated what he had just said. He had been describing the weather on a planet called Zephyria that was located in a star system 800 light-years away from Earth. So-Young realized that she was listening to someone speak an alien language that no human should have been able to understand. The alien device was not just a translator, it was a complete database of knowledge from across the galaxy containing information about hundreds of different alien species and their cultures, languages, and technologies. Tae-ho brain was being modified to store and process this vast amount of information. So Young watched in amazement as Tai-Ho demonstrated his new abilities by reading alien text that appeared on computer screens and translating complex technical documents that would have taken her years to decode. He could switch between dozens of different alien languages as easily as changing television channels. What he translated made So Young feel sick with fear and anger. The aliens who had crashed were members of a rebel group fighting against something called the Galactic Council. The council was composed of ancient alien civilizations that had been conquering and destroying younger species for thousands of years. The council viewed species like humanity as nothing more than resources to be harvested. They would arrive at a planet, strip it of all valuable materials, and eliminate any intelligent life that might interfere with their operations. Earth was already marked on their target list as the next world to be processed. So Young learned that the council had perfected this process over millennia and had destroyed hundreds of civilizations without ever facing serious resistance. They had overwhelming military superiority and used fear and surprise to prevent any organized defense. Most species surrendered immediately when they realized the hopelessness of their situation. But the rebel aliens had given humanity something that no other targeted species had ever possessed: advanced warning and detailed intelligence about their enemies. The alien device contained tactical information about Council weapons technology, battle strategies, and the locations of their major military installations. As Tai-Ho continued to absorb information from the device, So Young could see that his personality was changing. He was becoming calmer and more focused, as if he was seeing everything from a much larger perspective. His enhanced mind was processing strategic concepts and military theories from across the galaxy. The most terrifying revelation was that Earth had only 6 months before the Council harvest fleet arrived. The rebels had calculated the travel time precisely, and there was no possibility of escape or negotiation. The Council had never shown mercy to any species, and they would not make an exception for humanity. So Young realized that the alien device was not just giving Tai-Ho translation abilities, it was turning him into a military genius who understood interstellar warfare better than anyone in human history. His brain was being rewritten to handle tactical information that would normally require decades of study working together. So Young and Tai-Ho spent the next several days organizing and cataloging the information flowing from the alien device. They discovered that the Council fleet heading toward Earth consisted of over 400 massive warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities. With a single attack, the Council commander was Supreme Commander Veltar, a being who had personally overseen the destruction of 60 different worlds and had never experienced defeat in over 2 centuries of military campaigns. He was known throughout the galaxy for his ruthless efficiency and complete lack of mercy toward conquered species. But the alien device also revealed critical weaknesses in Council tactics and technology that no human military strategist would have ever thought to look for. The Council had become complacent over thousands of years of easy victories and had developed predictable patterns in their attack methods. So Young learned that Council soldiers were physically superior to humans and had advanced energy weapons, but they had never faced an enemy that understood their battle plans in advance. They relied on overwhelming force and psychological intimidation rather than tactical flexibility. The device showed Tai-Ho how to build weapons that could penetrate Council energy shields and how to predict their ship movements during battle. It also contained detailed information about Council psychology and culture that could be used to create strategies they would not expect. Most importantly, So Young discovered that there were other species throughout the galaxy who hated the Council but were too weak or frightened to resist. If humanity could somehow survive the initial attack, it might be possible to inspire a galaxy-wide rebellion against Council rulers. The days passed. Tai-Ho enhanced abilities continued to grow, and So Young realized that he was becoming something more than human. The alien device was preparing him to lead not just the defense of Earth, but potentially the liberation of dozens of oppressed worlds. The rebel aliens had made an enormous sacrifice to warn humanity about the coming threat, but they had also given Earth the tools to fight back in ways that no previous target species had ever attempted. The question was whether 6 months would be enough time to prepare for the most important war in galactic history. So Young knew that the fate of not just humanity, but potentially the entire galaxy, now depended on whether they could successfully use the alien knowledge. To defeat enemies who had never been defeated, the translation device had made Tai-Ho into humanity's greatest weapon, but it had also made him a target for the most powerful military force in the known universe. General Minwoo Lee had known Commander Tae-Ho Kim for over 8 years, and had always respected his judgment and tactical abilities. But the story about alien invaders and galactic wars sounded like complete madness. When Tae-Ho requested an emergency meeting to discuss defending Earth against an alien invasion, the general almost sent him for psychiatric evaluation. The meeting took place in the general's private office, where Tae-Ho calmly explained everything he had learned from the alien device about the Galactic Council and their plans to harvest Earth. General Lee listened politely, but his expression showed clearly that he thought his best officer had suffered some kind of mental breakdown. General Lee was about to end the meeting and order Tae-Ho to report for medical examination when something extraordinary happened. The alien device in Tae-Ho's hand began projecting holographic star maps that showed the exact locations where 3 more rebel ships would crash on Earth within the next 48 hours. Tae-Ho provided precise coordinates and timing for each crash site, along with detailed descriptions of what the rescue teams would find. The general decided to test these predictions by positioning military units at the specified locations, even though he was certain that nothing would happen. Exactly as Tae-Ho had predicted, 3 more alien ships crashed at the designated times and places. Each ship contained the same blue-skinned rebels with the same desperate warning about the approaching council fleet. The impossible accuracy of Tae-Ho predictions convinced General Lee that everything he had been told was true. Within 24 hours, General Lee had contacted military leaders from the United States, Russia, China, Japan, and 15 other major powers to arrange an emergency summit. The representatives arrived in Seoul expecting to discuss a new weapons system or terrorist threat, but instead, they heard the most incredible briefing in military history. Tae-Ho stood before the assembled generals and admirals and demonstrated the alien device by reading council military documents in their original languages and translating complex tactical manuals that outlined invasion strategies used across the galaxy. The military leaders watched in stunned silence as he explained exactly how their world would be attacked. The Council fleet would arrive in Earth orbit and immediately demand unconditional surrender, giving humanity exactly 1 hour to comply. When the deadline passed, they would begin systematically destroying major cities to break human resistance, before landing ground forces to complete the harvest operation. Traditional military tactics would be completely useless against Council technology. Their energy weapons could destroy tanks and fighter jets with single shots, and their spaceships had defensive shields that could deflect nuclear missiles. Council soldiers wore advanced armor that made them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. But Tae-Ho also explained that the alien device had taught him about weaknesses in Council tactics that could be exploited by human forces. The Council had never faced an enemy that understood their battle plans in advance, and they relied on predictable attack patterns that had worked for thousands of years. General Lee put Tae-Ho in command of a multinational task force with the mission of training soldiers from around the world to fight using alien tactical knowledge. The training program was unlike anything in military history because it combined human combat experience with strategic concepts. From across the galaxy, Tae-Ho's enhanced mind could process battlefield information at superhuman speed and predict enemy movements with incredible accuracy. He taught selected soldiers how to fight in small, coordinated groups that could outmaneuver larger Council forces, and how to target weak points in alien technology. The training was extremely difficult because it required soldiers to forget everything they had learned about conventional warfare and adopt completely new methods of thinking about combat. Many experienced officers struggled to accept tactics that seemed to contradict basic military principles. Meanwhile, Dr. So-Young Park worked with international teams of scientists and engineers to reverse engineer technology from the crashed alien ships. They discovered that Council weapons used exotic energy sources that human science had never encountered, but they found ways to build similar devices using modified human technology. The scientists developed new weapons based on alien designs that could penetrate Council energy shields and new communication systems that would allow human forces to coordinate attacks even if the aliens disrupted normal radio and internet networks. The weapons looked strange compared to human designs, but testing proved they could damage Council technology. As news of the impending invasion began to leak too, world governments' panic started spreading among civilian populations. Many people wanted to flee to remote areas or build underground shelters, but Tai-Ho convinced political leaders that running away would not save anyone. The Council had sensors that could detect human life signs anywhere on the planet, and they had experience hunting down survivors from previous harvests. The only chance for humanity to survive was to fight back effectively and force the Council to withdraw or negotiate. Tai-Ho spent 18 hours every day studying alien military history and developing strategies for the coming battle. His enhanced brain could analyze thousands of different scenarios simultaneously and find optimal solutions for problems that would have taken human generals months to solve. The most challenging part of the preparation was convincing people that humanity could actually win against such overwhelming odds. Most military experts believed that the best possible outcome would be to inflict heavy casualties on the Council before being defeated. But Tai-Ho had a much more ambitious plan. He told the assembled leaders that humans were not going to just defend Earth. They were going to capture Council ships and weapons and use them to carry the war back to Council territory. This was the most audacious military strategy ever proposed, and many people thought it was impossible. But Tai-Ho knew something that the others did not know. The Council had made a critical mistake. By underestimating human adaptability and creativity, they expected every species to fight using the same predictable methods, and had never encountered an enemy that could learn and adapt during battle. The alien device had shown him that humans had unique psychological traits that made them different from other species. Humans were naturally good at improvising and changing tactics when original plans failed. This flexibility had helped humanity survive on Earth for millions of years. The months of preparation continued. Tai-Ho trained over 40,000 soldiers from around the world in alien combat techniques. He also worked with engineers to modify human vehicles and aircraft for space combat, using technology reverse engineered. From Council designs, the entire planet was becoming a massive military base, preparing for the most important battle in human history. Every major city had hidden weapon installations, and every military unit had been restructured to fight according to alien tactical principles. When the Council fleet finally appeared in the sky above Earth, they expected to find a helpless primitive species. Instead, they would encounter humans who understood their weaknesses and had weapons that could hurt. Then the galaxy was about to learn that humanity was unlike any species the Council had ever tried to conquer. The morning sky over Seoul was clear and bright when massive shadows began to fall across the city. People looked up from their daily routines to see enormous alien warships materializing in the atmosphere, like dark metal clouds. Each ship was over a mile long and bristled with weapon systems that glowed with threatening energy. Supreme Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Harvester, watching the primitive planet spread out below him. He had personally overseen the destruction of 73 worlds and expected this operation to be completed within 2 days. Earth would be stripped of all valuable resources, and its population eliminated just like every other harvest. The Council fleet consisted of 412 warships representing the combined military might of 17 different alien civilizations. Each vessel carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon, and their crews had centuries of experience in planetary conquest operations. Veltar activated the global communication system, and his voice was broadcast to every human settlement on Earth. "Your species has been selected for resource extraction," he announced in perfect English. "You have exactly 60 minutes to cease all military activities and report to designated collection points. Resistance will be met with immediate termination." But instead of the expected panic and surrender, Veltar received a response that shocked him to his core. A human voice spoke directly to his flagship using Council military communication frequencies that no primitive species should have been able to access. Commander Tai-Ho Kim sat in his underground command center deep beneath the city of Seoul and calmly replied to the alien ultimatum. "Supreme Commander Veltar, your terms are rejected. Earth is under human protection, and we will defend our world against any aggression. Your fleet is not welcome." Here Veltar could not believe what he was hearing. In over 2,000 years of council conquests, no species had ever refused their surrender demand. Every intelligent civilization understood that resistance against such overwhelming force was meaningless and would only result in additional suffering. The alien commander immediately ordered his fleet to begin standard harvesting procedures, which involved destroying all military installations and government centers before landing ground troops to eliminate any remaining resistance. But when the first wave of council ships descended toward their targets, they encountered something that had never happened before. Hidden anti-aircraft installations throughout Seoul opened fire with weapons that shot concentrated energy beams instead of primitive chemical explosives. The energy weapons were based on council technology that had been reverse-engineered by human scientists, and they could actually penetrate council defensive shields. Veltar watched in disbelief as several of his smaller vessels took damage from weapons that should not have existed on a pre-space civilization planet. 2 council frigates were actually disabled and crashed into the Han River, sending massive explosions across the water. The human weapons were not supposed to be able to harm council technology. The primitive species was fighting back with equipment that seemed to be based on advanced knowledge of council engineering principles. This was completely unprecedented in the history of galactic conquest. In Tokyo, Captain Ji-Hae Choi was leading her special forces team through urban combat against council ground troops that had landed in the city center. The alien soldiers were 8 feet tall with advanced energy rifles and armor that could stop normal bullets, but they had never fought human soldiers who understood their tactics. Ji-Hae team moved through the city streets like ghosts appearing from nowhere to attack isolated alien patrols and then vanishing into buildings and sewers before reinforcements could arrive. The humans used their superior knowledge of the terrain and their natural ability to adapt quickly to changing situations. The council soldiers were confused because humans did not fight like any other species they had encountered. Most conquered civilizations either surrendered immediately or made desperate frontal attacks that were easily defeated. But humans seemed to understand that they could not win through direct confrontation. Instead, the human forces used guerrilla tactics combined with alien military strategies that Taiho had learned from the translation device. They struck at weak points in council formations and used the aliens' own tactical doctrines against them in ways that the council had never experienced. Reports began flooding into Veltar Command Center from council units across the planet. Human forces were inflicting casualties that should have been impossible given the technological advantage of council weapons and armor. The primitive species was fighting with a level of coordination and strategic intelligence that rivaled advanced civilizations. The most shocking incident occurred when human forces in London managed to capture an intact council transport ship using electromagnetic pulse weapons that disabled the vessel systems. The humans then boarded the ship and overwhelmed the alien crew using close quarters combat techniques. Veltar realized that something was terribly wrong with this harvest operation. Humans seemed to possess detailed knowledge of council military procedures and weaknesses that should have been classified at the highest levels of council command. They were fighting as if they had access to council tactical manuals. As the first day of combat continued, council losses mounted to levels that were completely unacceptable for what should have been a routine harvesting mission. Over 40 ships had been damaged or destroyed, and hundreds of ground troops had been eliminated by supposedly primitive enemies. The human resistance was being coordinated from multiple command centers that seemed to be connected by communication systems that the council could not intercept or disable. Taiho was directing global military operations with an understanding of council tactics that impressed even veteran alien commanders. Veltar called an emergency meeting with his senior staff to analyze what was happening on Earth. His tactical officers could not explain how humans had acquired such advanced weapons or developed such sophisticated battle plans in only 6 months of preparation time. The council military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and rapid victory, but humans were turning the invasion into a prolonged conflict that favored defenders who knew the terrain and could adapt their strategies in real time. This was exactly the type of warfare that council forces were least prepared to handle. As night fell over the first day of battle, Veltar had to admit that the humans were causing more problems than any species the Council had ever attempted to harvest. Word of the unexpected resistance was already spreading through Council communication networks and reaching other parts of the galaxy. For the first time in his long military career, Veltar began to worry that this harvest might not be completed as quickly as planned. The humans had done something that he thought was impossible. They had surprised the Council and forced them to fight a real war instead of conducting a simple extermination. The primitive planet that was supposed to be easily conquered had become the site of the most difficult military campaign in Council history, and Veltar was beginning to understand that he might have seriously underestimated the species called humanity. 3 weeks into the war between humanity and the Galactic Council, the conflict had settled into a deadly stalemate. Council forces controlled the orbital space around Earth, but human resistance had prevented them from completing their harvest operation. Every attempt by alien ground forces to occupy major cities had been met with fierce resistance that inflicted heavy casualties. Captain Ji Choi had become legendary among human forces for her ability to lead successful attacks against seemingly impossible odds. Her special operations team had destroyed over 20 Council vehicles and eliminated hundreds of alien soldiers using tactics that combined human creativity with alien military knowledge. Tae-ho called Ji-hai to his heavily fortified underground command center for a briefing on a mission that could potentially end the war. His enhanced mind had been analyzing Council fleet movements and communication patterns, and he had discovered a critical vulnerability in their command structure. The entire Council military operation over Asia was being coordinated by a single massive command ship that remained in high orbit above Tokyo. The vessel served as a communication hub that linked all Council forces in the region and contained the computer systems that controlled their tactical networks. If human forces could somehow capture that command ship intact, they would gain access to the Council main computer network and potentially disable Council military operations across multiple star systems. It was an incredibly ambitious plan that required perfect timing and flawless execution. Ji-hai studied the holographic display showing the Council command ship surrounded by escort vessels and defensive weapon platforms. The target was heavily protected and located in space where no human had ever fought before, but she had learned to accomplish missions that others considered impossible. Tae-ho had discovered that the Council defensive formations followed predictable patterns based on military doctrines that had not changed in centuries. Every 6 hours, the escort ships rotated their positions to prevent fatigue among their crews, and during each rotation, there was exactly 12 minutes when their defensive coverage had a small gap. The plan required Ji-hai team to use a captured Council patrol ship that human engineers had modified with better weapons and life support systems. They would wait in the shadow of a communications satellite until the precise moment when the enemy defenses shifted and then accelerate straight up toward the command ship. Ji-hai selected 8 of her best soldiers for the mission, including specialists in alien technology, hand-to-hand, combat and demolitions. They spent 2 weeks practicing the assault plan using detailed blueprints of Council ship interiors that Tae-ho had obtained from the translation device. On the night of the mission, Ji-hai team launched from a hidden base in the Japanese mountains using their stolen alien vessel. The ship was painted black to blend with space and equipped with advanced stealth systems that would hopefully prevent detection until they were close to their target. They waited in orbit for over 3 hours monitoring Council communication traffic and tracking the movement patterns of the escort ships. Tae-ho was providing real-time intelligence from his command center and coordinating with other human forces to create diversions that would distract the aliens at exactly the predicted moment. The Council defensive formation began its scheduled rotation, and Ji-hai ordered maximum acceleration toward the command ship. Their vessel shot upward like a missile, moving so fast that Council sensors barely detected them before they crashed through the hangar bay doors. The assault team stormed out of their ship wearing captured Council armor and carrying energy weapons that were identical to those used by alien soldiers. They moved through the ship corridors with practiced efficiency using hand signals and alien languages that Tae-ho had taught them. The Council crew was completely unprepared for human soldiers fighting inside their own ship. They had never experienced close quarters combat with an enemy that understood their equipment and could speak their language. The humans moved like ghosts through the vessel, eliminating resistance with ruthless precision. Council soldiers were taller and stronger than humans, But they had no experience fighting determined opponents in confined spaces. Their energy weapons were designed for long-range combat and were less effective in narrow corridors where humans could use superior agility and tactical flexibility. Jai-Hai team fought their way to the main bridge where they found the alien command crew frantically trying to activate the ship's self-destruct system. The human soldiers overwhelmed the bridge defenders in seconds and prevented the destruction of the vessel and its precious computer databases. Dr. So-Young Park had been monitoring the mission from Earth and guided the assault team through the process of accessing the alien computer systems. Using knowledge from the translation device, she helped them navigate through Council security protocols and extract critical information from their networks. What they discovered was even better than they had hoped. The Council military network was completely centralized, with every ship base and installation connected to a single command center in their home galaxy. If they could find a way to infiltrate that network, they could potentially disable Council forces across the entire galaxy. Working with computer experts from around the world, Taiho developed a computer virus based on human programming logic that was completely alien to Council technology. The virus was designed to spread through quantum communication links and disable weapon systems while leaving life support intact. The virus represented something that no Council computer had ever encountered: human creativity and unpredictability. Alien technology was highly advanced but also very structured and logical. The human virus would introduce chaos into systems that were designed for perfect order and efficiency. Human programmers had included subroutines in the virus that would adapt and evolve as it spread, making it impossible for Council technicians to develop countermeasures. The virus would also broadcast a message throughout the galaxy, announcing that Earth was under human protection and warning other species that the Council could be defeated. Jihi team uploaded the virus into the captured command ship computer network and watched as it immediately began spreading to other Council vessels in Earth orbit. Within minutes, alien ships started experiencing system failures as the virus infected their networks and disabled their weapons. The virus worked faster and more effectively than anyone had predicted, spreading through the Council quantum communication network at the speed of light and reaching Council installations across dozens of star systems. The centralized network that had made the Council military so efficient became the pathway for their complete defeat. Supreme Commander Veltar watched in horror from his flagship as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Council bases that had operated for centuries were going offline, and entire fleets were reporting total system failures. The humans had accomplished something that no species in galactic history had ever managed. They had not just defended their world, they had turned the Council's most advanced technology against them and crippled their military machine across multiple star systems. The virus was spreading faster than any Council technician could contain it and showed no signs of stopping. As Council ships throughout Earth orbit began shutting down and drifting helplessly in space, Taiho knew that humanity had achieved something unprecedented. They had not just survived the Council harvest, they had defeated the most powerful military force in galactic history, using nothing but human ingenuity and determination. 6 months after the human computer virus had crippled the Galactic Council fleet, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have imagined. The virus had spread through the entire Council quantum communication network faster than their technicians could contain it, disabling military installations across hundreds of star systems and leaving the mighty Council completely defenseless. Supreme Commander Veltar sat in his powerless flagship, floating helplessly above Earth, and contemplated the end of his military career and the collapse of an empire that had dominated the galaxy for over 3,000 years. The humans had accomplished something that every military strategist in Council history would have declared impossible. They had not just defended their primitive world against overwhelming odds, they had used the Council-owned technology to destroy their military supremacy across the entire galaxy. The virus continued to spread and adapt, making it impossible for Council engineers to develop effective countermeasures. Taiho stood in his command center, watching the disabled alien ships drift in Earth orbit, and knew that humanity had crossed a threshold from which there could be no return. His enhanced mind could see the strategic implications of their victory spreading like ripples across the galactic political landscape. The translation device had taught him that the Council empire was built on fear and the illusion of invincibility. When that illusion was shattered, the entire structure would collapse as oppressed species throughout the galaxy realized that their oppressors could be defeated. So Young Park had established communication with rebel groups on over 60 different worlds, using the same quantum network that had carried the virus. The rebels were reporting that Council garrison forces were abandoning their positions. As news of the Earth victory spread through underground resistance movements, messages were arriving daily from alien species, asking for human assistance in their own liberation struggles. The universal translator built into the alien device allowed Tae-ho to communicate with dozens of different civilizations and coordinate a galaxy-wide rebellion against Council rule captain. Ji-hai had been promoted to admiral and was now commanding a growing fleet of human warships built using captured Council technology. Human engineers had proven remarkably skilled at understanding and improving alien designs, creating vessels that were superior to the original Council ships. The most shocking development came when a Council diplomatic mission arrived at Earth, carrying surrender terms and requesting negotiations. Supreme Commander Veltar had been forced to swallow his pride and ask for a meeting with the human commander who had orchestrated